What is WWE's big twist for the undisputed WWE Championship match between Cody Rhodes and John Cena at SummerSlam? These two, as we know, signed the contract on SmackDown, one voluntarily, one not so much, as John Cena, seemingly unconscious, was forced to sign the contract by Cody Rhodes. But we knew we were getting to this point at some point down the road, after WrestleMania 41, when it was John Cena defeating Cody to win the championship, the record-setting 17th title win for John Cena. But it was always a matter of, what do you do the next time that these two get in the ring together and go one-on-one for the biggest prize in the game, right? The undisputed WWE Championship. Well, there are a lot of theories out there as to what WWE could do at SummerSlam. They've added the street fight stipulation, meaning that we are going to get something different than what we got at WrestleMania 41. I think for most people, that's not a bad thing, because as we know, that match was just a straight-up professional wrestling match that involved Travis Scott, and I don't think we're going to get that at SummerSlam. But again, the question is, what are we going to get? Because you have to believe, with the way they're setting this up, there has to be some big payoff here to not only the story of John Cena's retirement tour, and how now we are getting closer and closer towards the end of that tour coming up in several months. But also, it's all back to the story of you-know-who, Cody Rhodes. What is Cody's story coming out of SummerSlam? And I think that's where all of this sort of potential twist begins in terms of what WWE could do to really make this very impactful. Could it be something that rivals what they did not at WrestleMania, but at Elimination Chamber, where John Cena made his shocking heel turn to align with the final boss, The Rock? Cody turns down his soul being sold, and instead it's Cena, who we know makes the huge move. The follow-up was not what we expected. There was nothing with the final boss or The Rock or any of those. Dwayne Johnson, any of the monikers, there was none of that coming out of Elimination Chamber. But now, that is what people are asking. Is this where, finally, the final boss comes back to WWE and makes himself at the center of this whole thing between John Cena and Cody Rhodes? I will say up front, as we discuss this potential theory, it's always possible, right? It's always possible when it comes to The Rock. But you guys know, if you watch this channel and you've gotten your hopes up before, with all of us connecting the dots and thinking that The Rock was going to be involved back at WrestleMania, I don't know if I want to go necessarily back to that again. Could it happen? Of course it could happen. It's The Rock. He's on the TKO board. He's a big part of the story, whether anyone wants to believe it or not, right? He is still a big part of this particular story with John Cena and with Cody Rhodes, because it all started there. And so, absolutely, you could put him into the mix here. First two-night SummerSlam, incredible atmosphere this is going to be. It's the main event of night 2. You could absolutely find a way to bring the final boss character back into this and let him somehow play a role in that. Which, of course, brings us to the next possible theory, and that is, of course, this big double turn that we've all been talking about when it comes to what WWE could do to, again, twist this thing in a different way. And as I've mentioned, you certainly have seen the crowd reactions for John Cena over the past couple months now. Yes, they were there at WrestleMania 41. Yes, they were, again, always going to kind of be there in a certain sense because John Cena turned heel, right? He became that guy. He wasn't just the same Cena that everyone had booed for years and years and years because he was too good, right? No, he became a little bit of a heel with a different side of him. And, of course, he's attacking the fans and all this other stuff. But now we know things have started to change a little bit, whether it was the stuff with R-Truth, where all of a sudden you see a bit of that hesitation from John Cena, but ultimately he decides this is my path to victory. And then, of course, it escalated a bit with CM Punk at Night of Champions, where Cena was thinking about it, but he couldn't do it that time because Cena was growing as a person, right? He was getting closer to the good side. Again, even though he found a way to win that match off the heels of Seth Rollins taking out CM Punk, still, that was the next logical step to get us to the eventual John Cena good guy, right? And so now you have the setup where I've said before, Cody Rhodes is going to get booed, and he is going to get booed a lot at SummerSlam. based on the fact that this is at MetLife Stadium. It is East Rutherford, New Jersey, and I can tell you already, the crowd is going to be a big focus here when it comes to this particular match. They will be for both nights of SummerSlam. But this is the type of crowd that is going to embrace where John Cena is at on his retirement tour. And for that reason, Cena is going to get, I think, a much larger percentage of the cheers and a good chance versus Cody, right? Cody is not going to get that same reception, I don't think. He will absolutely get cheered. Of course he will. But I think Cena is going to be the clear person in this scenario where you have Cena set up as the guy that you are kind of rooting for. And you could also point to the SmackDown thing and say, well, why is that? Well, because, hey, if you're going to root for John Cena, it makes sense because the other guy, the good guy, just took this guy out and forced him to sign a contract as he's unconscious. This other guy forced him to sign a contract into a match that has a special stipulation that apparently this guy didn't know about. And so now they're locked into a match when John Cena was trying to back out of it. So, there's a lot of little logical things in there that you can point at and say, man, Cody really decided to do that? That's not a babyface, right? That's not the guy we're going to cheer. He just forced this guy to sign a contract that he didn't want to sign. But if you really think about this possibility of the big double turn, right, and everything that could play out that way, it's all about timing. Is WWE really ready to go forward with a Cody Rhodes heel turn? To me, that is all dependent on one simple thing. And that is simply the availability of the final boss himself. If you're going to make this turn, the only way that this turn is going to be impactful at a level of the John Cena turn itself. Now, let's not talk about the follow-up to it, but the turn itself, the reason it was so successful and the reason it was so good in terms of the way, the presentation, everything that worked out at Elimination Chamber on that single night was because it was the combination. It wasn't just Cena. It wasn't just The Rock. It wasn't just Cody turning The Rock down. It was the combination of all of these elements, right? And so, yes, you could do it again, where somehow this is now a situation where that offer to Cody, he accepts it. He's joined the final boss. Somehow that is a scenario where now Cody has sold his soul. He didn't know if he should do it months ago, but now the new Cody who keeps saying he doesn't flinch, he's not going to flinch anymore the way he did at WrestleMania 41. He didn't flinch the other night on SmackDown when Cena tried to back out of the match, and Cody took it to another level. So now he's not going to flinch. And to do that, perhaps the next step is to take it to that, right? To where he does realize this is the better place to be, aligned with the final boss, The Rock, and all the power of TKO and WWE and all this other stuff. It's the new Cody. But I think the thing we have to keep looking at here is that I don't know if WWE's ready to do that just yet. Because like I said, to me, if they are, it only makes sense in a universe where The Rock is somehow aligned, but not just for that night, right? It is a much longer story you're telling there, knowing that getting John Cena back to the good side is really going to largely be dependent on what I think this is probably his second biggest match left. The biggest match is probably the final one, but I think this is your second biggest match remaining for John Cena. And from that standpoint, you have to do something huge, and that's where the crowd may turn both guys. They may turn John Cena on that one night into the guy they're cheering for. They may also turn on Cody Rhodes because we've seen it happen to a lesser extent at WrestleMania. I think you're going to see a much bigger sort of split between the crowd at SummerSlam. Could be wrong on that, but I think a lot of us are expecting it. And so when you're thinking about all these potential twists that WWE could bring into this, it's clear. It could be something, again, as simple as, all right, maybe The Rock finds himself back into this. Maybe this is the time that Dwayne The Rock Johnson, the final boss, is coming back on SummerSlam because he knows how bad the criticism was when he didn't show up at WrestleMania 41. Maybe this is the make good. But at the same time, could this be something where because they've added this street fight stipulation, do you see it being something that maybe simply is twisted in a way where it's John Cena and Cody Rhodes, and Cody is willing to take it a little too far because it's a street fight. There's no disqualification. There's no countouts. Nothing. Cody can do whatever he wants to John Cena and vice versa. And so is it where Cody, who we've seen with Kevin Owens, with Randy Orton, former friends, Cody was willing to eventually get to a point where he did whatever he had to do to get past both of those two men. Is he going to do that to John Cena? Is he going to simply beat John Cena down to the point to where the crowd is rooting for Cena? And that maybe is how you do it, and it does put both men kind of in a tricky situation coming out of it. Because if we're picking a winner, which I'm not going to do just yet, although I'm really leaning towards one side, and we'll have our SummerSlam prediction coming up soon. Remember, these are two guys that are going to be filming movies and all this other stuff. And so the winner coming out of this, there is a bigger story to tell. There's also a story to tell for the loser coming out of this match. And so all that to say that I think there has to be some kind of big hook here. There has to be a big twist in this whole story. It does seem as simple as to think maybe this is the time WWE's like, we're going to do it with Cody, make the turn. I'm not completely sold on that yet. The only scenario I'm sold on that in is if they are convinced that The Rock is going to be part of the story, not only at SummerSlam, but somehow moving forward, and you do a third match between maybe Cody and Cena at some point. But I don't know if we get there, because I still think, to me, the final opponent for Cena that makes a lot of sense based on getting him back to the good side would be Gunther. Because I think Cena wanting to retire as the champion, remember, that's been his motto here. And yes, he's done it as the bad guy. But if his motto is to retire as champion because he wants that 17th to mean something, to me, there's no one better to take that away from John Cena, perhaps in his final match, than someone like Gunther. Is it Cody, the ultimate heel? Maybe. But I don't know. It does seem like there seems to be some momentum towards Gunther as a potential final opponent. And so all of these potential things are going to play out now at SummerSlam. Could we also have the twist of a Seth Rollins cash-in? You guys know where I stand on the Seth Rollins injury situation. Let's not forget that this could somehow play into things where everyone is thinking that Seth Rollins is going to cash in on CM Punk and Gunther. One of the two. Whoever walks out as the World Heavyweight Champion, Rollins going to pull up, throw the crutches away, and all of a sudden the man is healed. But maybe it's something bigger than that. Maybe Rollins has his eye on Cody versus Cena, and that could somehow come into play and be the big twist that WWE needs for this match. Because again, in my opinion, you have to have something that feels so much different than what you did at WrestleMania 41. Not to say they didn't draw a lot of money, but we know the criticism was there, and I think doing the street fight element, all of a sudden, you're definitely probably going to tie in some kind of interference on the outside. We don't know who it's going to be from. Is it Seth Rollins? Is it The Rock? Is it someone else? There's lots of different options that you can work with. But to me, like I said, there are multiple possible twists you can work with on this match. Cody Rhodes versus John Cena, undisputed WWE Championship. And so the question is, which one is WWE doing? This feels a little more unpredictable than it did previously. I know a lot of people are rooting for the double turn. Will we get it? Will we not? Will The Rock be there? Will he not? All these questions that we now have heading into this huge match at SummerSlam in a couple weeks. You guys let me know what you think. Hit that subscribe button. Hit the like button as well. Give me your predictions. What do you think's going to happen? John Cena, Cody Rhodes, Part 2. And could WWE have a big twist in store for the undisputed WWE title match?